Ben Ginsberg is an MSNBC analyst and former RNC general counsel. Chip Saltzman, a Republican strategist and former campaign manager for Mike Huckabee. Ben, let me get your response to something Trump said in Saturday in Wisconsin about what he called the corrupt system in place. Take a listen.
We're dealing with a corrupt system. We're dealing with a system that's not fair. And I say to people, I don't care what it says. If I won, I should get more delegates. So we agree. I don't care.
Ben, what do you think of that?
Well, I'm not sure it's a corrupt system. I think that you can have a lot of sympathy for a candidate who loses delegates on a slate as he did Saturday in Tennessee. But I'm not sure that means the system is corrupt.
Well, but isn't part of the issue here? It seems to me that we have two trains careening towards each other. One of them is the fact that in the modern era, we have come to understand primaries as fundamentally small d democratic enterprises in which voters choose the person they want as the nominee. The other is that the actual rules of the system aren't that voters choose the nominee. Voters simply choose delegates through an attenuated process who then in turn choose the nominee. And it's going to be a bit of a rude awakening when those two things crash into each other in Cleveland.
Well, I don't think they crash into each other, Chris. I mean, the Republican and Democratic primary system has always been about the delegate allocation process, that's the primaries, and the delegate selection, and that's picking the delegates. That's like any other representative democracy. You vote for members of Congress or your legislature or your city council, but you don't tell them how to vote on every matter. The delegate selection process is similar to that.
Well, Chip, what's your response to that? Is that how it scans to you?
Yeah, look, I was a state chairman in Tennessee and actually wrote the bylaws that this was worked out with on Saturday. This is complicated. It's tough to maneuver, but it's not unfair. Those are what the rules are. And, you know, I would have probably liked to see maybe a little bit more delegate allocation in Tennessee for Mr. Trump, since he did do well in Tennessee. But this is the process. And like I said, it's complicated. You have to really spend a lot of time on, but these are the rules. And I've been a big proponent. I haven't endorsed anybody, but I want to make sure that everybody follows the rules. Don't change the rules for any one candidate. Let the candidates play them out as they are, and then that's how we're going to come up with our nominee.
So Ben, is it your position that no matter what happens in Cleveland, as long as it adheres to the rules, which I would say definitionally is true, it will adhere to whatever the rules are at the time, that is going to be a saleable, legitimate outcome to the party writ large and its voters?
Well, I think, as always, it depends how it's done. The reality is that there will be rules set by the delegates to this convention, and those will be the rules that will follow. Right? I mean, if what your question is right now, is there a divided Republican Party, the answer to that is yes. No matter which way you go on some of these issues, you are going to anger a significant number of people. But that's why you have something like a convention with rules to reach those. And, you know, you hope that it comes out in November as a unified party.
Chip, you talked about helping to craft the rules, and there's two ways, I think, to think about rules in the context of any election, right? Those rules can be viewed as, when we look at what we consider legitimate democracies, those rules bind and constrain the people in power. When we look at illegitimate democracies, places that ostensibly have votes but we know they're rigged, those rules are essentially produced by the people in power so that they can get more power. Which of those two are we looking at in the context of the Republican Party?
Well, I certainly hope it's the one that's fair. And what you mentioned brings up a great point, and Ben touched on it a little bit. Optics are going to really matter in this convention. For the first time, people actually care who's on the rules convention, who's on the rules committee, who's on the credentialing committee. There will be media there. And so the RNC and the National Party needs to be very sure that they're going to be as transparent as possible. And I think the chairman has mentioned that. That's his plan. But like Ben said, somebody's going to lose. Somebody's going to be really mad. And we need to make sure that it's all laid out for everybody to see so everybody can understand the process of why somebody won, but more importantly, if somebody loses, why they lost there as well.
Ben, it's been 40 years since the Republican Party had a primary in which the candidates went into the convention without it being absolutely locked up. That was Ford and Reagan, of course, in '76. Since it's been 40 years, are you confident that the institutional knowledge, memory, and capacity exists within the party to arbitrate this in a transparent and fair manner?
Well, I'm not sure that it's historical knowledge, but I do have faith in the people who are in the party to come up with those fair outcomes that you were talking about. I mean, it is a tenet of all conventions, all representative bodies, that the members of that body, the delegates in this case, make the rules for that convention. I do believe that's what's going to happen, and so that will convey the legitimacy of this process.
Chip, based on what you saw happen in Tennessee, what is your assessment of the ability of the Trump team to maneuver their way through this fairly complicated Byzantine thicket of rules to get the maximum amount of loyal delegates to Cleveland?
Well, I'll say this, they're getting better, but time is running short, and they need to keep winning. The easiest way for this to happen is to make sure they get to 1237 through the process of winning primaries and caucuses. And tonight's obviously going to make an interesting sidebar in that, is if he loses and it becomes a little bit more difficult, still can get there, but that's the easiest route. The Trump campaign has been outmaneuvered on the ground in these states that the delegates are either uncommitted or that they've been able to let the committees make the decisions after the fact. I think for some point they said, oh, we won the state, then we get all the delegates. Again, that's not how the rules are. And I think the Cruz campaign and Jeff Rowe, the campaign manager, who's an inside the dugout kind of guy, picked up early on, and they put resources behind that. But I will say this, I've seen the Trump campaign, especially over the last 30 days, really move fast and try to catch up, but they've still got a little way to go. But I still think the easiest way to do it is just get 1237 in the states.
That is definitely the easiest way to do it. We will see coming out of the Wisconsin contest what the models show for their odds of getting that. Ben Ginsberg.